Jesus Freak 777, I want to thank you for posting this particular video, because for me it really couldn't have arrived at a more serendipitous time than it did. I listened to it all the way through, and at the end I've come to the conclusion that really the only thing you and I seem to agree on here is that Grand Theft Auto 4 isn't suitable for children. But as you say yourself, it wasn't designed for them. I'm with you. I have a strong belief that children need to be protected from environmental factors that might cause them physical or psychological harm. And it's hard to think how anybody sane could disagree with that opinion. But the rest of what you were saying, I mean, all I saw was the same old moral high ground arguments and preaching that in reality aren't high ground at all, because they're just built on quicksand. And let me just explain to you why I feel that way. Let me give you an example. I'd be really interested to hear what you think of this Letter from Hell video that's been doing the rounds on YouTube recently. It's been subject to quite a bit of discussion recently on YouTube, especially amongst the atheists. And I've put a link up here for you to go and see it yourself if you haven't already. Tell us what you think of this. I mean, do you think this is an example of media that's appropriate for children, or is your outrage just confined to, non-Christian media? Because as far as I see it, the really big difference here between Grand Theft Auto 4 and Letter from Hell is that one of them is aimed at adults and one of them is aimed specifically at children. And there's going to be few people, I think, who can argue that for you to prevent your son from playing this game, from using the game in your house because he's a minor, is the wrong thing to do. It isn't the wrong thing to do. It's absolutely right. He's not an adult, and this is an adult game. And legal implications aside, you've made a moral decision, and as a minor living in your house, he has to abide by that. But what doesn't make sense is to say that it's hypocritical for you or anybody else to play it when he can't, because that statement is just plainly ridiculous. There are plenty of things that adults can do that the law prevents children from doing. Drinking alcohol, getting married, gambling, voting, there's an endless list of things. And actually, quite the contrary from it being hypocritical, I think it's important for children to realise that not everything that an adult does is an option for them. Anyway, back to the argument that you were making about whether or not you think games are suitable, those games which are suitable versus the ones that aren't. I think it's deeply flawed. Your argument in essence seems to be that some violence is okay, but sex is absolutely not. So what is it about sex that scares you people so much? Why is it that you think sex is worse than violence? Because what I'm hearing is the same tired old Christian prudery being trotted out time and time again. I mean, is it because there's loads and loads of violence in the Bible but precious little love, and people just, fear the unfamiliar? Is that the reason? Your conclusion that suitability of a game depends on the context of the violence in it is just nuts. You say that you've got a problem with violence against civilians, violence that's committed by authority figures, but your holy book is chock full of the same. How much harm do you think that does? Doesn't it send out a message to vulnerable minds seeing it that sometimes it's okay to do things, evil things against other people because you think you're right? And regardless of whether or not you believe that, there are a multitude of people out there who follow your same God, your same Jesus, who feel absolutely, totally, 100% justified in whatever atrocity they've just committed because they've got right on their side. And it doesn't stop with acts of outright violence against people either. There's plenty of young children out there, and I mean young children, kids under the age of 10, who every week will go to Sunday school and they'll hear about hell and what's waiting for them if they don't toe the line. You claim that you're worried about psychological damage. Well, what kind of psychological damage do you think that does to vulnerable young minds? If we're talking about protecting kids from harm, protecting kids from unsuitable material, then we should be punishing parents who subject their kids to that kind of abuse as well, not just video games. And what's all this nonsense about these games teaching us or teaching our children that image is everything and respectability is nothing? Image and respectability are the same thing. They're just superficial appearance in a social context. Respecting somebody is not the same as being respectable. Respecting somebody is about treating people appropriately. Respectability is about conforming, or rather appearing to conform to some social norm, simply so that it impresses other people. If you go to any church full of pious Christians, you'll see examples of this, them all judging each other. And the televangelists are supreme examples of people who do as they do, but don't do as they say. And your holy book bangs on relentlessly about moats and planks in eyes and swallowing gnats and camels, and that's exactly what you're doing here. It's just archetypal hippo-Christianity. It's self-proclaimed holier-than-thou piety, outrage at the sex and violence in a game versus the disgusting acts that are portrayed in the Bible. Acts that you and people like you use to warp children's minds by telling them that this is actually truth and that it's some kind of moral code. If you want an example of harmful media that's unsuitable for children, you don't have to look much further than your nightstand. And you argue that, if we surround ourselves with vulgarity, then we become vulgar. Well, by the same token, if you read and believe and immerse yourself in your monstrous book, then what can you become? I'd like to echo your concluding sentiment here and urge all parents out there, if you truly love your children, boycott Christianity. Don't take them to Sunday school. Don't allow them to read the Bible. Don't take them to church. Protect your children from this kind of garbage. I encourage each and every one of you, protect your children.